The Atacama Desert in South America receives less than 1 millimeter of rain per year. To put that in perspective, that's thinner than a paper clip. Some areas haven't seen a single drop of rain in recorded history. And yet, for over 500 years, entire communities have been pulling their drinking water directly from the air. No pumps, no wells, no pipes running for miles underground. Just a piece of mesh. That should seem impossible, but here's the thing, it's not only possible, it's been proven at scale, on multiple continents, in conditions that engineers would call unworkable. And the part that nobody talks about is this: you can build one yourself for less than the cost of a restaurant meal. But to understand why this works, and why it works so reliably that people stake their lives on it, you have to understand something about the air around you right now. Because the air you're breathing, it's full of water, everywhere, at all times, and most of us have no idea how to reach it. That's about to change. Let's go back to the high ridges above Lima, Peru. The city sits in one of the driest corridors on Earth, a narrow strip of coast pressed between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains. Less than 1.5 centimeters of rain per year. The soil is cracked. The hillside communities, called lomas, have no water infrastructure. Women and children walk hours each day to collect water, and when they return they carry just enough to survive, not to cook fully, not to grow food. Just enough to not die. But every morning, something extraordinary rolls in from the ocean. Fog, dense, soaking, relentless Pacific fog. It doesn't rain here, but the sky turns white and thick with moisture from June through November. For generations, people watched it drift through and disappear, carrying what felt like a taunting abundance of water that no one could reach. That's not the full story. In 2009, a man named Abel Cruz started hanging large rectangular nets on the hillsides. Not fancy technology, not government infrastructure. Nets, mesh stretched between two poles angled into the wind, and the fog started filling them, dripping, collecting, flowing down into pipes and pouring into tanks. 7 collectors, 2,271 liters of fresh water, every single day. Communities that once survived on 4 liters of water per person went to 12. Families planted figs, grapevines, and olives in soil that hadn't seen a crop in living memory. One man outside Tacna began raising 1,000 chickens, an entire livelihood, powered entirely by fog. Abel Cruz has since installed over 2,000 of these nets across 8 communities, in Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, and Mexico. All from a piece of mesh facing the wind. But this wasn't Abel Cruz's invention, and here's where the story gets much older and stranger. Archaeologists excavating sites in Israel found low circular stone walls built around ancient vines, not to protect them from wind or animals, but to collect the morning dew that formed on the stones and funnel it toward the roots. In South America's Atacama Desert, the same desert where no rain falls, piles of stones were arranged in precise configurations so that condensation would trickle down the inner walls and pool at the base, ready to be collected and stored. In Egypt, similar formations. In medieval England, wide shallow depressions called dew ponds were carved into limestone hillsides, coated with materials that retained the cold of night, so moisture would collect on the surface by morning. The Inca Empire placed buckets under certain trees, not randomly, but specifically under trees with fine, needle-like leaves, because they had observed that those trees dripped water every morning, even when it hadn't rained. They didn't know the physics, but they understood the pattern. And that pattern is written into every cold glass of water you've ever set on a table on a warm day, when a ring of moisture forms on the outside of the glass that you didn't put there. Here's where the science clicks into place. Air is not empty, it carries water vapor, invisible, gaseous everywhere. How much water the air can hold depends entirely on one thing: temperature. Warm air holds more, cold air holds less. When you warm something up, you increase the air's capacity to carry moisture. When you cool it down, you reduce that capacity. Now imagine pushing warm, moist air against a cool surface. The air near that surface drops in temperature. At a certain point, a very specific temperature, the air simply cannot hold all of its moisture anymore. It hits a threshold, and at that threshold the water vapor doesn't disappear. It becomes liquid, it condenses. That threshold has a name: It's called the dew point asterisk. The dew point is not a fixed temperature. It changes based on how much moisture is in the air. In humid climates, the dew point is high, meaning even modest cooling triggers condensation. In arid regions, it's lower. You have to cool the air more aggressively to reach it. But here's what matters. The dew point always exists. Even in the Sahara, even in the driest places on Earth, the water is always there, waiting. A fog net doesn't create water. It doesn't manufacture anything. It simply intercepts water that is already traveling through the air and gives it a surface to land on. This is the invisible mechanism behind every dewy morning, every fogged-up window, every cloud that forms over a mountain ridge. The air rises, cools, hits the dew point, and the invisible becomes visible. And here's where it gets interesting. Fog is just a cloud touching the ground. That's the entire difference between fog and a storm cloud altitude. And fog that moves horizontally, carried by coastal or mountain wind, passes through anything that stands in its path, including mesh. Each cubic meter of fog carries between 0.05 and 1 full gram of liquid water. Those aren't rain drops, they're microdroplets, between 1 and 40 micrometers in diameter, invisible to the naked eye, so fine they're carried by the breeze rather than falling under gravity. When that fog moves through a mesh net, those microdroplets collide with the filaments of the mesh. They're too small to bounce off, the surface tension of water grabs them. They cling, more droplets arrive. They find each other, merge, grow heavier. A drop forms that is now large enough for gravity to matter. It slides down the filament, reaches the bottom of the net, falls into a gutter. And just like that, water from air. The efficiency of this process depends on one critical design factor: the balance between the mesh being open enough to let wind pass through and dense enough to intercept droplets. If the mesh is too fine, wind pressure pushes the air around the net like a solid wall, and the fog simply bypasses it entirely. If the mesh is too loose, the droplets pass straight through without touching anything. The optimal design, refined through decades of research, is a mesh with filaments roughly the diameter of 3 to 4 human hairs, with openings approximately twice that size. That sweet spot allows maximum airflow while maximizing droplet capture. Studies have measured collection efficiency of up to 66% under ideal wind conditions. But even basic shade cloth, the kind sold at any garden center for under $10, gets the job done. Now let's build one. The materials list is almost insultingly simple. You need 2 vertical posts, wood, PVC pipe, or metal stakes. You need a frame to hold tension. This can be rope, wire, or a lightweight frame you lash together. You need shade cloth or agricultural mesh, which you can find at hardware stores, garden supply shops, or online for roughly $8 for a square meter. And you need a collection trough, a gutter, a folded piece of tarp, a pipe cut lengthwise. That's it. Step 1: site selection. This is the most important decision you will make. Your net needs to face the prevailing wind direction, the direction from which fog or moisture-laden air arrives in your area. Coastal hillsides, valley ridges, elevated terrain near bodies of water, these are your prime locations. A net facing the wrong direction collects almost nothing. Step 2: frame construction. Drive 2 posts into the ground roughly 2 meters apart. The taller the better. Most effective nets are at least 1.5 to 2 meters high. String a top rope between them under tension, and a bottom rope or rail as well. This is your mounting structure. Step 3: hang the mesh. Attach your shade cloth or polypropylene mesh to the frame, so it hangs vertically and taut. The mesh must be able to catch and shed water. It should have enough angle or structure to funnel droplets downward. Some builders add a slight inward curve to increase contact time between droplet and filament. Step 4: install your collection trough. Position it directly beneath the bottom edge of the net. A simple gutter, sealed at one end and angled toward a container at the other, works perfectly. Your collection container can be a bucket, a barrel, or a tank, whatever your needs require. Step 5: let the morning work. On a good fog day, a single square meter of well-positioned mesh can collect 3 to 10 liters of water. A 2 meter by 2 meter net, 4 square meters, can bring in 12 to 40 liters before sunrise. That's a meaningful contribution to a household's daily water needs from a structure that costs less than a movie ticket to build. Scale that up slightly. A net 4 meters wide by 2 meters tall, 8 square meters, built from around $30 to $40 in total materials, can consistently produce 25 to 80 liters per foggy morning, in a location with regular fog events that approaches or exceeds a family's basic daily water requirement. And this changes everything. Because water independence, true structural independence from municipal systems, from trucks, from wells, has historically been the province of the wealthy or the incredibly remote. Fog harvesting doesn't care about either of those. It doesn't require power. It doesn't require maintenance beyond occasional washing. The system is entirely passive. No pump, no moving parts, no ongoing cost. FogQuest, the Canadian non-profit that has operated collection projects worldwide, built a 40 square meter collector in the village of Chungungo, Chile, that ran for a decade. 10 years of water collection with no fuel, no electricity, and minimal upkeep. In Morocco's Anti-Atlas Mountains, the organization Darcy HMAD deployed the world's largest operational fog collection system in 2015. Before those nets went up, women in the region walked up to 3.5 hours every day just to carry water home. 3.5 hours, returned, every single day. The nets changed that to almost nothing. But here's something worth sitting with. If this technology is this simple, this old, and this effective, why isn't it everywhere? The answer, when you trace it honestly, is a combination of factors that have nothing to do with the technology itself. Fog harvesting only works where fog reliably exists. That's a real geographic constraint. You need elevation, you need proximity to moisture sources, coasts, large lakes, mountain valleys where humid air rises and cools. Without that atmospheric condition, even the best designed net collects almost nothing. The technology doesn't create fog, it simply intercepts it. Beyond geography, there's a structural reality. Infrastructure investment follows money and population density. Large-scale water projects, pipelines, treatment plants, desalination attract funding because they serve large numbers of people and generate revenue. A fog net serving 20 families on a hillside doesn't fit that model. It's not profitable to sell. It's not easy to scale through conventional supply chains. And so it doesn't get the attention or the investment that its simplicity and effectiveness arguably deserve. There's also a quiet credibility gap. A solution that costs $8 and requires no electricity feels, to the modern mind, like it can't possibly be serious. We've been trained to believe that effective technology has to be complex, has to be expensive, has to require a technician and a warranty. But nature disagrees. The Stenocara beetle of the Namib Desert, one of the driest environments on Earth, survives entirely on fog water. It has no infrastructure. Its shell is covered in microscopic bumps that are hydrophilic, water-attracting, surrounded by surfaces that are hydrophobic, water-repelling. The bump attracts moisture from the fog. The surrounding surface causes the droplet to slide off the bump and roll toward the beetle's mouth. In conditions where no liquid water exists above ground, this beetle thrives. MIT researchers have spent years and significant funding trying to synthetically replicate what evolution perfected for free. That's not just biology, that's a design principle. The real lesson inside all of this isn't about fog nets. It's about what we assume is true about scarcity. We assume water scarcity is about the absence of water, but in most places where people struggle to find water, the water is actually there, suspended in air, rolling in from coasts, condensing on every cold surface every morning. The scarcity is a failure of collection, a failure of infrastructure, a failure of perception. A 5,000-year-old stone pile in the Atacama knew something we keep forgetting. Water is everywhere. You just need a surface for it to land on. So here's the question worth asking. How many other problems that feel enormous are actually waiting for an $8 solution? This is just one of many systems hiding in plain sight, and most of them are far older and far simpler than anyone wants to admit.